Let's get it. 580 Sports Talk on a Thursday. Our final show before the Christmas holiday is coming at you for the next 3 hours here on 580 WIBW, FM News 1049, and around the world at 580WIBW.com and at youtube.com/@sportson580. We got the live video stream going up as well. Hello, hi, and how are you? Hope that you are staying warm wherever you may be for today's show. I am Dan Lucero. You are hearing my voice first because I am on top of Huntoon Hill this afternoon. Brendan Dworzinski is in parts unknown, currently bunkered in a secure location, 1,000 feet below the ground, give or take. And thankfully, this means that Brendan has safely arrived at his holiday destination. Brendan, how was the travel for you and your wife the last 24 hours or so?
Honestly, it did not go that poorly. We were able to beat the storm. We went through northern Missouri, drove up the length of the state of Illinois, stayed overnight in beautiful town of Pontiac, Illinois, home of the Route 66 Museum, by the way. And we spent the night there, made about an hour and a half long drive this morning, currently actually approximately maybe 15 feet above ground right now on the second floor in the home office of my in-laws. So no, it's been good. We thankfully were able to beat the blizzard, beat the snow, and made it here safely to celebrate the next couple of days, the Christmas holiday with a couple of us, or the couple of our families. But it is exciting. Glad that we are going to get to put this show together, our final show before Christmas. We've got a great guest list coming up, Pistol and Fitz and Mitch. So excited to be a part of it, even though I am somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 miles away from Topeka.
So Brendan is there. Myself and Kyle Manthe are on Huntoon Hill. Kyle Manthe across the glass running the board this afternoon. And we have a jam-packed edition of 580 Sports Talk. We are going to have 3 guests at 3:35 or so. Rick Peterson of TopSports.News will join us for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around. Get some thoughts on high school sports as they hit their holiday break this week. We will also speak with Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com. The Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up was delayed yesterday because of Kansas State basketball, but we'll get Fitz's thoughts on all things Cats, including their 26-man football recruiting class and their 11-1 record on the hardwood after they held off Radford on their final game before the holiday yesterday afternoon. And at 5:30, we'll be joined by Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs. He joins us courtesy of Hy-Vee and Azure Credit Union. We'll get Mitch's thoughts on the Chiefs' win in Houston and look ahead to their game on Saturday against the Seattle Seahawks. We'll break that game down a little bit. We will talk about the Chiefs' Pro Bowl selections, including one in particular that may have raised some eyebrows. Orlando Brown Jr. is going to the Pro Bowl, but is that a standard that he has really reached? And has he played his way back into consideration for a long-term contract? We will discuss that. We will also play a little either or over under. We'll preview Thursday Night Football a little bit later on. We got our Loot Out of Kansas sports headlines. And I can't forget, we are crowning a December champion of What Is Wrong With You, our 11th or 12th, rather. There are 12 months in the year. 12 months in the year. And this will be our 12th and final What Is Wrong With You monthly champion that will be considered in our Tournament of Champions coming up to round out the year of What Is Wrong With You next week. It is a jam-packed show, but you are invited and encouraged to be a part of the program today. You can join us on the Big O Tires text line. That's 785-272-9429. 785-272-9429 is the Big O Tires text line. You can hit us up there. You can also comment on the YouTube. We can see your comments if you are able to comment on the YouTube stream. I hate to disappoint Vance on the YouTube stream. I do not believe we are going to have the Dan graphics today. I do not believe we are going to have a need or a call for the handmade graphics here this afternoon on the YouTube stream. We got Kyle's behind the board running that show, and we will not have any call for the Dan graphics. So hate to disappoint in that regard, but you can get involved with us in those ways. You can hit us on the Big O Tires text line, or you can comment on the YouTube page. But let's get into what we won't get to further break down on Friday, so this is kind of our last look ahead to Saturday's Chiefs game. They are finally back at Arrowhead Stadium after 3 straight road games, and they welcome in the Seattle Seahawks. And the perception of this game in particular has fluctuated rapidly as the season has gone on, mostly due to the perception of the Seahawks themselves fluctuating rather rapidly. Going into this season, they looked to be a team that would scrape the bottom of the NFC. That's what most people expected after they traded Russell Wilson away stunningly in March for draft picks mostly and a couple of players and handed the reins of their offense to Geno Smith. Then the Seahawks broke out with a 6-3 start to their season. And people thought, well, wait a second. This is a legitimate NFC West contender. This is a team that looks like it's ticketed for the playoffs. That is no longer nearly the certainty it felt like since that start, as the Seahawks have dropped 4 of their last 5, and they are walking wounded coming in to Saturday's game in Kansas City. They will not have Tyler Lockett, one of the best wide receivers in the game. He is out with a broken finger. They will also be without their best interior defensive lineman, Al Woods, and box safety Ryan Neal, both of whom are really useful and important playmakers for the Seattle defense. They have both been ruled out due to injury as well. For the Chiefs, they've ruled out Jody Fortson, the tight end. They've ruled out Jody Fortson for Saturday, and Colin Saunders, who's been ill all week and has not practiced, is doubtful, but it is still much better news on the injury front for the Chiefs than it is for their opponent, which has kind of been a common theme throughout the season. Anyway, let's get to these Seahawks. As people who listen to this program know, that is my favorite team. I am still, I think, capable of being objective, but certainly, Brendan, you are more capable of being objective than I am. When you look at this matchup coming up on Saturday, what is the thing that stands out to you about how the Chiefs and the Seahawks match up at this point in the season?
Well, it feels like they are two teams that, even with all the things we've complained about with the Chiefs in the last couple of weeks, they do feel like teams that are headed in opposite directions. I mean, the Seahawks were the best story in the NFL to open up the year through those first 4. I mean, it goes all the way back to opening Monday Night Football, right? When it was Seahawks versus Broncos, it was the Russell Wilson revenge game, and all the Seahawks team has a terrible roster. They stink. I mean, going into the year, even our good pal Matt Verderam from Fansided.com, he was saying, yeah, I think Seattle has one of the worst rosters in the entire NFL. Well, they come out, they beat the Broncos in a game that was ugly. It was hideous. It was not exactly fun to watch unless you were a fan of the winning side, but they come away with a win. Geno Smith gives you that great quote after the game. And it continues game after game. Like, hey, Geno looks great. This offense is actually looking just as good with Geno Smith as it did with Russell Wilson the last 2 years. Hell, it might even look better than it did last year. They kept winning, and now the wheels have fallen off a little bit, mostly because of the defense. It does stink to not have Tyler Lockett for this game in particular, but it does feel like this is a Seahawks team that is still better than expected. I think that's fair. Geno Smith is obviously better than expected. He got a Pro Bowl nod, for God's sakes. I mean, that's an incredible feat for a guy who was essentially on the scrap heap going into this season. So I think this is a Seahawks team that they're dangerous at this point more than I think they're necessarily playing well, or more than I would even call them necessarily a good team at this point. They're still in the playoff hunt. They've still got a legitimate chance to lock up one of those final wild card spots in the NFC. And again, to borrow from Geno's quote after week 1, I'm not going to write them off for that. They certainly have a chance. And look who they're fighting against for that spot in the NFC playoff picture, right? They're fighting against the Commanders, the Giants, the Lions, and maybe the Packers. Like, maybe there's a slim chance they're even in the hunt. Like, that's it. That's the group they're fighting against. So they're still a playoff caliber team. The reason I say that they are maybe more dangerous than they are good, the defense is rough. You've been talking about that over these last couple of weeks when it's really been struggling. And I know we'll get to some of the details here in just a matter of moments. The details are rough. The offense hasn't been quite as good recently. It's been solid, but it has not been quite as good as it was early in the season when it was truly rolling like very few offenses around the NFL were early in the year. They can be beaten. They can be had. And I think for this Chiefs team, the way they match up, especially if Lockett's not out there, that's one more weapon that the Chiefs don't have to worry about on the outside. I know Kenneth Walker has been banged up going into this week. It feels like a game the Chiefs should be able to win. I know it's a fairly big spread. It is a home game. It's a noon game. The last one bad. We looked it up on the show earlier on this week talking about the spreads. It feels like a game the Chiefs should have the clear advantage, but similar to apparently that Broncos game, apparently similar to the Texans game as well, the Chiefs cannot afford to overlook this team because they do still have DK Metcalf. And Geno Smith has had a comeback player of the year caliber season, that there's still a lot about this team that is dangerous. But I think it's going to be hard for them to be able to keep up with the Chiefs because I'm not sure that they can stop the Chiefs, whether it's Mahomes throwing it or Pacheco and McKinnon running it.
Yeah, that's kind of the biggest thing for me. Setting aside the Seahawks on offense, defensively, they can't stop anybody right now. The reason they've lost 4 of their last 5 is they are getting gashed on the ground. This stretch started with their game in Germany against Tampa Bay, where a Buccaneers running game that had looked completely moribund all season long, all of a sudden woke up and produced their best game of the season against the Seahawks. And it felt like an anomaly, and then Josh Jacobs rushed for well over 200 yards in an overtime victory for the Raiders against the Seahawks. And it's not an anomaly. It's just kind of what the Seahawks are. They can't stop the run with their best guys on the field, and their best guys aren't going to be on the field. 2 of their 3 best defensive tackles are out for this game. Brian Monet tore his ACL on Thursday against the 49ers, so he's out for the season. And Al Woods, the ageless Al Woods in the middle of that defensive line, he has also been ruled out due to injury on Sunday. So that leaves the Seahawks interior defenders, Shelby Harris, Poona Ford, and like they were trying guys out off the street this week to try and fill out their roster at defensive tackle. That's how much they've struggled on the interior, and you have to believe that's a big advantage that the Chiefs should look to press. Ryan Neal's absence is a big one in that department as well. Ryan Neal's a guy that most people probably have not heard of, but he's really important to what the Seahawks do as kind of their third safety, kind of a hybrid defender, a sure tackler, somebody who creates some havoc and creates turnovers. Without him, do you know who his backups are? I'm going to give you 2 names, and I want to hear you react to these 2 names, Brendan. Tease Tabor and Jonathan Abram might see the field.
Okay. Tease Tabor, remember from a few years ago, he was a fairly highly touted draft prospect coming out of Florida. There was hype that he could be a first rounder. There was a lot of talk about Tease Tabor. He has never been anything in the NFL. He's just not an NFL caliber player based on what I've seen. Jonathan Abram is now on his 3rd team this season. Dog, he could not cut it for the Raiders and the Packers this year. That god-awful Raiders defense, an equally god-awful Packers defense. I don't know how he ended up getting a job, period, after the Packers let him go. Why do the Seahawks, see if you can answer me this, Dan, I don't know if there is a logical answer. Why do they continue to gobble up failed former Packers safeties? Most recently, Jonathan Abram. They had God-forsaken Josh Jones earlier in the season. It's a strange strategy to hire guys or to sign guys who sucked for other teams with bad defenses to your own struggling defense.
Yeah, it sure is. Josh Jones, he would be next man up, but he is also injured. So thankfully, we don't have to watch him. Last I saw Josh Jones, he was the guy whiffing on Josh Jacobs on his 80-whatever yard touchdown run, walk-off touchdown he had in overtime to beat the Seahawks a few weeks back. So thankfully, he's not a factor in the depth chart anymore. But yeah, it goes to Tease Tabor, and then they did just pick up Jonathan Abram. I don't know why they do it. They just need bodies. They're at a talent deficit, and their 6-3 start kind of masked the fact that talent-wise, like 53-man roster-wise, they kind of are what everybody thought they were going to be. They were able to outperform that because they haven't played the most strenuous schedule, and their offense has played at a really high level. Thing about the offense right now, the passing game still clicking, but they have been a lot more loose with the football, turning it over a lot more frequently in this last 5-game stretch. And they have stopped being able to run the ball, which is a wild thing to say about a Pete Carroll Seahawks team, but they cannot run the football right now. They have really, really struggled. And that has left them in a lot of 3rd and long situations. And it's just easier for defenses to get off the field in 3rd and long. And Geno Smith is going to have one less reliable downfield target with the absence of Tyler Lockett to throw to on 3rd and long. So for me, a lot of this game comes down to, can the Seahawks keep DK Metcalf in check? Because he's the guy. Right now, he's the weapon that you have to worry about for Seattle. You're not so concerned that they're going to run it for 150 yards on you. I like Kenneth Walker III a lot. Think he's going to have a really good career, but it's a systemic breakdown of the running game right now. There's just nothing that they do well in the running game. And, oh, yeah, Kenneth Walker III, not exactly 100%. He's questionable for Saturday, in fact, and so is his backup, DJ Dallas, which leaves them potentially with Travis Homer and somebody named Tony Jones, who sounds like a Madden creative player. Those are your healthy running backs for the Seahawks right now. They can't run it right now, just at all. And what that leaves them with is relying heavily on the passing game. Well, DK Metcalf is going to be that guy. And the question for the Chiefs defensively, I think, is have they learned any lessons from what Jerry Jeudy did to them in the Denver game, where he was essentially the only threat in the passing game, and he still went for 3 touchdowns? Have the Chiefs learned their lesson? If they can limit Metcalf's opportunities, particularly in yak situations, because Metcalf's numbers historically, yards after the catch, haven't been great, but he's so big and fast, he has the potential to make plays after the catch. If the Chiefs can keep Metcalf in check, I don't think there's a path to score enough points for Seattle on Saturday.
I'm with you. It's just going to be, again, a part of me says, yeah, this should be a game in which the Chiefs should be able to have a bigger advantage than normal because this is a depleted Seahawks offense. And while that is the more dangerous of their two phases, their two sides of the ball, Lockett especially being such a good deep ball threat that eliminates some of the over-the-top threat that the Seahawks have. But I don't know. I guess I'm just a little bit scarred from the last couple of weeks with this Chiefs team. I mean, they should have massacred the Texans last week, man. They should have just destroyed that team, and yet they couldn't quite do it. I mean, you're looking at a game here on Saturday in which the weather, I think, is going to mitigate some of the advantage or disadvantage for one side versus the other, because that's what harsh weather games can do. It is going to be extremely cold. Don't know if there's going to be any other conditions they have to deal with, but that does make things more challenging. It can be difficult to throw the ball when it is windy, when the ball is extra cold. So that's going to maybe make it a lower scoring game. I don't know if you'll need as many points to win, which obviously helps Seattle out, but I'm just not sure where their points are going to come from to the degree that they're going to need to keep up with the Chiefs, because their defense, let me put it this way, their defense is going to be writing some checks that their offense is not going to be able to cash in this game. Like, I'm just not sure where those stops are going to come from, because if you can't make at least a couple of stops, then your depleted offense isn't going to get a chance to get out on the field and to make something, make chicken salad out of what. So it seems like it's a matchup that should favor the Chiefs. We have also seen now 2 weeks in a row there have been matchups that should have clearly favored the Chiefs by a large amount. They end up only winning games by single scores each. So I like the Chiefs in this game. I think, logically speaking, I would like the Chiefs here by 10, maybe 11 points even. But difficult weather and the fact that the Chiefs just have not been able to keep their foot on the gas for a full game over the last few weeks does have me leaning a bit more toward maybe this is backdoor cover territory. Maybe this is Seattle puts on one final take us seriously kind of performance before the final 2 games of the year.
Yeah, the texter does point that out from the 785 on the Big O Tires text line. We said the same exact thing about the games the last 2 weeks about the Broncos and the Texans, that they should not be able to score with the Chiefs, that the Chiefs should be able to win by sizable margins. And as we're all aware, that has not been the case. But if you listened to Tuesday's show, what did we talk about as the biggest difference in those games? It's turnovers. And the Chiefs have turned the ball over too often. And the Seahawks defense, if there's one thing that they have done pretty consistently well throughout the season, it's turn over their opponents. They have been a very good turnover forcing defense. Ryan Neal's been a big part of that. He's not going to play for the Seahawks on Saturday, but they've still got star rookie cornerback Tariq Woolen, who has half a dozen interceptions on the year. So there's still the chance for the Seahawks to create enough havoc and enough extra possessions with short field that the Chiefs have been giving up to keep this game close. If the Chiefs are able to protect the football, and again, no Ryan Neal and the ability to run the ball that they're going to have on Saturday should mean that they do take better care of the ball than they have. If they keep it to 1 turnover or below, I don't think this game's going to be close. I think the Chiefs will cover what is currently a 10-point spread at FanDuel fairly handily, win by at least 2 touchdowns if they keep the turnovers at a reasonable figure. And I think they're going to be able to do that because of some of the absences on that Seahawk defense and again, the ability they're going to have, I think, to run the ball effectively. The Chiefs should live in second and medium, third and short, and just be able to convert over and over again, move the ball and name their score because this Seattle defense just cannot. Now, they were better Thursday night against San Francisco in that they didn't get completely gashed, but we're not looking for, 250 yards from Isaiah Pacheco, but if it's a similar Chiefs performance on the ground than it was against the Texans, just without the turnovers, and I think that's reasonable to expect given how well the Chiefs have run it and how poor the Seahawks have played against the run, then I think that Kansas City probably does score at will and win this game fairly handily. Again, it is a 10-point spread presently at FanDuel. The over-under is 48.5. I'm going to go with 28-17 Kansas City. I think that's going to be the final score. So I do have them covering, but I have an under on 48.5, given that it's projected to be very chilly coming up on this Saturday in Kansas City. What are you thinking in regards to the spread and the total of this one, Brendan?
I'm going to give you a weird score. This feels like a real weird score kind of game. I'll go with a slightly bigger margin. I'm going to give you Chiefs 29, Seahawks 16. I don't know how these two teams are going to get exactly to that number, but I do think they are going to get there. So that'd be 45 total points for you. I do think the Chiefs end up covering the spread. I think they just have too much firepower for this Seahawks team with the way Seattle is playing right now. So give me the Chiefs. Give me the Chiefs by a fairly large margin. Maybe being back home at Arrowhead Stadium is the juice they need, the fuel they need to finally turn a corner and get back to the way they were playing prior to that Bengals game.
So those are our predictions for Saturday in Kansas City. We'd love to hear yours on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, or on the comments of the YouTube stream. That's youtube.com/@sportson580. You can subscribe, catch all of our video content, and see the show live. You can also find the link at our Twitter account as well, twitter.com/sportson580. We've got so much more to come on today's program. Coming up a little later on this hour, Rick Peterson of TopSports.news is going to join us. We'll also speak with Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com and the voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, on today's show. But when we come back from our first break, we're going to play a little either or over under. That's coming up. We're just getting started. Thanks for being with us on this Thursday edition of 580 Sports Talk. It's 3:32 here on 580 Sports Talk. We're just getting started. One prediction in on the YouTube comments for Saturday, 27-17 Chiefs. That'd be a push if you took the 10 either way with FanDuel. But that feels about right to me, that it should be a 2-possession Chiefs win. The Seahawks will be able to make some plays through the air. I don't think you can keep Metcalf down for all 60 minutes. And given the Chiefs' turnover woes, you can probably bake in a turnover in scoring range that helps the Seahawks put some extra points on the board. But ultimately, I just don't think I think that Kansas City and Seattle is not the kind of team that if you subscribe to the theory, and I know many do, that Andy Reid and the Chiefs just only pull out what's necessary to win against the lower teams in the league, the lower teams in the standings like Denver and Houston. Seattle's too good for the Chiefs to do that. This is not going to be a game the Chiefs are going to try and scrape if you think that they are the scraping types. I think they'll come out bent for leather and figure out a way to win by those 2 possessions. But we are welcoming your thoughts as well on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, and on the YouTube comments. We're going to play a little either or over under here on the program right now. And Brendan, I don't know what your phone is telling you about your current location, but I looked at my phone during the break, and it is telling me that it feels like it is negative 25 degrees outside. That is what it feels like. Earlier this morning, it was telling me, my phone was, that it felt like negative 30 degrees outside. That is obscene. When they tell folks to stay inside when it feels like that, they mean it. They really mean it. And I am hopeful that you folks that are listening are doing so in a warm location, and that if you are able to stay inside, that you have done so today and stayed nice and toasty. But, Brendan, I want to ask you the either-or question that is an obvious one on a day like today. The extreme cold or the extreme heat? Would you rather have days with temperatures in the negatives, with wind chills deep in the negatives, or would you rather have a day where it's 107 degrees with crazy humidity? Like, what extreme, and weather's only gotten more and more extreme over the years, it feels like. What extreme are you more able to tolerate? The extreme heat or the extreme cold?
I'm going with the extreme heat every single time. Without question, I am going with the extreme heat. I don't have a problem being outside, at least momentarily, when it's super hot out. Yeah, okay, you get sweaty. Great, jump in the shower. Like, it's not that big of a deal to me. You can enjoy some sunshine. You can still do things outside, even if it's just brief. You fire up the AC, a fan, whatever it might be at home. You know what you can't do if it is this cold out? You can't do anything. You cannot leave your house without being completely miserable. Me specifically, I have not been able to feel my feet all day. Like, from when we got up at 8 o'clock this morning and got on the road to now being at my in-laws' house, I can't feel my feet. Have not been able to all day. It's cold. It sucks. I hate it. I will always take any amount of heat over any amount of cold. I like snow. You know, I like having seasons. This cold is awful. Just the worst.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. So I went out. There's a city ordinance. You got to, shovel your walk, shovel your drive. For many years, I was an apartment dweller, and that was never a concern for me. If it was cold and they told me not to go outside, there's no reason for me to go outside. So I just wouldn't go outside. It was great. I liked that very much. I am a homeowner now because I married one and I live with my wife. And so we got, a walk to shovel. Yeah. We got a walk to shovel and a driveway to shovel. And so we went out. We figured by noon maybe it would have warmed up a little bit. No, that was the lie detector determined that was a lie. It was still just miserable out there. And I swear I could feel icicles on my eyebrows, on my eyelids. I could feel them forming as I was shoveling the walk. It was just absolutely gross. I don't like the extreme heat either. And as a Coloradan, I will never get used to humidity. I don't know how you do any humidity, never mind some of the more excessive humidity that you get even further south of here. But yeah, I'll still take the heat. I'd still rather melt than be absolutely frozen to the bone and deal with the wind chills.
Or in a similar vein, when it comes to the chores. Would you rather be out mowing the lawn or doing some sort of yard work when the heat is bearing down on you, or would you rather be shoveling or snow blowing when it's freezing cold?
I think honestly though, for that one, I'd rather mow when it's hot. Well, you know what? Let me think on that. Let me think for just a second on that. Because at least like if you tag team it, like my wife and I both went out. I told her she didn't have to go out. She went out anyway. She's been doing it before. She's had the house for about half a decade. And she went out there and we tag teamed it. We were done probably in about 15, 20 minutes. If you're mowing, that feels a lot more strenuous on those hot, humid days. Yeah, I think I'd rather shovel. You can bundle up and you can protect yourself from the cold a little bit. There's no protecting yourself from the heat. You can't get naked and mow. And not without getting in trouble. Not without getting arrested.
True. That sounds like a story we've probably had on What Is Wrong With You before. See, but you can just like walk with a Gatorade or walk with a cold bottle of ice water. And I'm still taking mowing. I am still doing anything in the heat over anything in the cold because, and again, this is very much a personal issue. Within 3 minutes, I cannot feel any of my body and it just hurts and it's miserable and I hate it. So I will take sweating and dripping and mowing the lawn over anything in the cold. And it does not matter what the activity is.
I think that's entirely fair. Kyle Manthe across the glass. Kyle never talks. Our texters make a little fun of him for it. Kyle, open up your mic. Make sure you're in program 3 so the folks in the video can hear you. What's your preference, the extreme heat or the extreme cold?
I think I'd have to lean to the extreme heat.
Really?
In terms of if you're going to be like mowing or shoveling, I'd rather do that in the extreme heat. At least then you can kind of pretend it's like a workout almost because you're sweating so much.
I guess that's true. Yeah, you shed a little bit of that. Shed a little of that water weight. Good take, Kyle. Appreciate you chiming in on the subject. We got to get to a break because we're going to be joined by Rick Peterson of topsports.news coming up next for the Vista Credit Union High School Whip Around. That is coming up after this break. You have been listening to 580 Sports Talk. Every Thursday on 580 Sports Talk, we are pleased to be joined by the great Rick Peterson of TopSports.news for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around. Rick Peterson and his crew covering all of the high school sports and Washburn athletics at TopSports.news. And we've get some thoughts from Rick on what is happening in the winter prep sports season. But first, I got to know, Pistol, are you staying warm? You staying out of that cold today?
I have not stepped out my door today. I'm definitely staying inside and staying as warm as possible.
Well, I am glad to hear that. I want to ask you this. Going into the winter moratorium, of course, there are no games, no contests in any of the winter sports for the next little bit before the calendar flips from December to January 2023. Which team do you think, and this can apply to any sport, but which team do you think had the best December or the best pre-winter break stretch in the city?
Oh, maybe Seaman girls basketball was very impressive. Highland Park only played 3 games, but they were very impressive. Those two of it, Silver Lake girls, they were really, really impressive. So those 3 immediately come to mind, but there were several.
One team in particular that had a really good final week of competition before the end of the December schedule was Washburn Rural's girls. They had started 1-2, and that maybe raised some eyebrows, but with wins over Shawnee Mission Northwest and Wichita Heights, 2 outstanding programs, I think that served notice that the Lady Junior Blues are right back on schedule, and with Zoe Canfield leading the way, definitely a force to be reckoned with despite that slow start.
Yeah, Zoe and Brooklyn DeLay, kind of an inside-out duo, and they're working some new girls in. Jaden Ingram was a starter last year, a very key starter, and decided to concentrate on volleyball. And so they had to make some changes, but I think they're where they need to be right now.
We're talking to Rick Peterson from TopSports.news. It's our Invista Credit Union High School Whip Round here on 580 Sports Talk. You can find Pistol's work over at Newsprint, all of our tremendous high school programs and Washburn Athletics as well. And, of course, you can find Pistol on Twitter, too, at Peterson_Rick. In a similar vein there, Pistol, and, of course, coming up next week when we come back from the Christmas break, get ready for the new year, we'll talk about some of the biggest stories from the year overall. But from the basketball side so far, is there one specific headline that stands out to you, one storyline? It can be anything for a particular team, boys and girls, or maybe just city basketball in general that has really stood out to you above anything else so far through the first 3 weeks of the season?
I don't know if there's any one thing. I think, there's several things. I mean, there's several players. Here, I'll go with the freshmen. I mean, like Maddie Gregg. I had no idea what to expect from her, and she's been a very good player for the Seaman girls. And some other players that I wasn't familiar with that have really come on. So we'll know more as soon as we come back. We're 3 weeks away basically from the mid-season tournaments. So we'll know a lot more as we go on. But I think getting Aaron Davis back is a storyline for Seaman. I thought he was a big, big difference maker when they made their run last year. And when he was over, and you saw him when he came in, he was immediately a factor for them in his first game back. So, there's several like that, several storylines like that.
Outside of the freshman class, because obviously this is their first exposure through these first 3 to 5 games of the season, their first exposure to varsity competition, are there any other players from around the city, again, boys or girls, who have really surprised you, made you take notice that, wow, I didn't know this was going to be a star player, but they've had a great start to the year? Do any other names jump out to you in that regard?
Not really. I mean, the guys I knew, the guys and girls I thought were going to be good, have been good. There are obviously some players at all schools that have had to kind of move into more prominent roles. Washburn Rural boys, for example, I didn't know exactly what to expect out of them except for Jack Batchelor. Other than that, there's some guys that, played last year, but now they're in really key roles for a new coach. Caden Ballard has made a immediate impact as a sophomore in his first year of varsity, and just some kids like that. And on the girls' side, Brooklyn Gormley has had to, they lost a couple of key big girls inside, so she's really had to step up inside for Seaman. And the other night was probably the best player on the court. So she's done her job, but there's several like that.
One more question on the basketball side of things for Rick Peterson from TopSports.News, joining us for our Vista Credit Union High School whip around here on 580 Sports Talk, as we do every single Thursday here on the program. You can find Pistol on Twitter at Peterson_Rick and all of his work over at TopSports.News. When we return to basketball action, Pistol, coming up in about a week and a half now, what are some of the things, or what is at least something that you are most excited to see, whether it's a team that you haven't gotten to see so far this season, or maybe more of a team you've already seen to this?
Well, right off the bat, I think we get Topeka High and Washburn Rural girls. And obviously that'll be a very big matchup, as it has been for the last several years. On the county side, Silver Lake and Rossville go do battle right out of the gate. So those would be two really good matchups early.
Rick Peterson is our guest from TopSports.News. It's our Vista Credit Union High School whip around. We do it every Thursday here on 580 Sports Talk. Pistol, let's switch gears a little bit, talk about some of the other winter sports. I want to look at what's happening on the wrestling mats. What in December occurred that maybe caught your eye or turned your head a little bit in terms of some early season wrestling competition?
Well, they went to some, particular teams like Shawnee Heights and Washburn Rural. We knew they were going to be good. They've really tested themselves with some big tournaments that, maybe they didn't, dominate like they're kind of used to, but I think it was very good experience for them. I think both the Shawnee Heights boys and girls and the Washburn Rural boys and girls are going to be very good again. Kinder Hurler over at the Rossville just continues to pile up victories. Tristan Johnson's a very good wrestler for Topeka West girls. So, right away, we'll get right back into it as soon as we get back. And, it won't be long before we have the league tournaments and then things like that, because that's a relatively short season.
How about in the pool? Swimming wise, certainly Washburn Rural's had a very good program for years, and Seaman has as well, with a state championship in recent memory. There's some good swimmers come out of Shawnee Heights as well. What's the kind of the defining story or the direction you're looking when it comes to early swimming action? Well,
Shawnee Heights has great talent, individual talent. Washburn Rural has the depth, and like you said, Seaman is also very good. The city meet went down to the final event last year between Rural and Seaman, and I think Heights won the most individual events. So it'll be that kind of deal today, but again this year. But Rural definitely has depth.
And I know that it has not started yet, but it will once the holiday break gets going. But, you and I have said it before, Pistol, that Topeka's a good bowling town. What's the high school bowling scene looking like this year? Who are the teams and bowlers to watch?
Well, Seaman swept the 5A, 1A titles last year, and they'll be good again. They lost some key people, but they also have some really key bowlers back. Ethan Burns on the boys' side, Katie Price and some others on the girls' side, Cheyenne Turkin. So Seaman's always the team to beat, or has been lately. Washburn Rural is always very good. They have again, like Seaman, they have some good bowlers coming back, some state placers. So those two are where you start when you start talking about bowling in the city.
Once high school sports resume after the winter moratorium, the place to read all about them will once again be topsports.news, and the authoritative voice on all things prep sports in Shawnee County and Topeka is Rick Peterson. He joins us every single Thursday for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around. Pistol, as always, it is a pleasure and a privilege. Have a very Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. Same to you, and we'll see you next week.
That is Rick Peterson. That is the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around here on 580 Sports Talk. Are having a little bit of connection issues with Brendan Dworzinski out at his secure location, but we'll get him back for the 4 o'clock hour. And also in the 4 o'clock hour, we're going to talk about one of the more maligned members of the Kansas City Chiefs so far in the 2022 season. And the season that he has had has earned him a Pro Bowl selection. That's Orlando Brown Jr. Feels like we've talked about him less in a negative way the last few weeks. Do the numbers bear that out? Is he really playing at a Pro Bowl level? And if he is, do the Chiefs need to maybe reconsider giving him the big contract that he seemed to be hunting for last offseason? So we'll do a bit of a deep dive into Orlando Brown Jr. and by extension talk about the Pro Bowl a little bit, because yeah, it's easy to kind of roll your eyes about it because especially this year, there is no Pro Bowl game. There's just the skills competition, but it means a lot to the players. It means a whole lot to the players to be selected. So we'll talk a little bit about that with regards to Orlando Brown Jr. Also in the 4 o'clock hour, Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com will join us. Usually he's on Wednesdays, but he agreed to join us today after he couldn't join us due to K-State basketball yesterday. We'll talk to Fitz about K-State's football recruiting class, their 11-1 record on the hardwood, and much, much more in the Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. And our What Is Wrong With You December playoffs. We will choose our final monthly winner of 2022. That's all coming up in the 4 o'clock hour with myself and Brendan Dworzinski. I'm Dan Lucero. That's hour number 1 in the books of 580 Sports Talk. Let's get it. Hour number 2, 580 Sports Talk, Thursday edition. The final edition of 580 Sports Talk before the Christmas holiday. We're all checking out a day early and coming back a day late. 4-day weekend for the Sports on 580 crew. So this is our final show until Tuesday. No show Friday, no show Monday. Obviously no show on the weekend. You don't expect that from us anyway. But we'll be back on Tuesday, the whole gang, with mic'd up from noon to 3 and 580 Sports Talk from 3 to 6. But we are going to take a little holiday time, spend it with our families and loved ones. And so we will be off tomorrow and Monday. I am Dan Lucero. Brendan Dworzinski, his vacation, so to speak, has already begun. He is in a secured, undisclosed location, parts unknown, whatever you want to call it. But he is checking in with us from Chicagoland, and Kyle Manthe is across the glass running the board for us on this afternoon's program. We've got lots to get to in this hour. We're going to talk to Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com. Usually the Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up comes your way on Wednesdays, but we had a short show yesterday due to K-State basketball. So instead of talking to Fitz yesterday, we're going to talk to him today. We're going to talk to him and talk about the big old haul for Chris Kleiman and company for National Signing Day. 26 brand new Cats and the best recruiting class that Kleiman has secured, and maybe one of the best in K-State history when all is said and done. We'll get his thoughts on that and a couple of wins for K-State in basketball over Nebraska and Radford since last we spoke. The Cats are 11-1 going into Big 12 play, so we'll get Fitz's thoughts on that as well. That's coming up at the bottom of this hour. We will also be crowning a champion in What Is Wrong With You for the month of December. We have 11 monthly champions already selected. We've got one more to pick, and then next week, the highly anticipated What Is Wrong With You Tournament of Champions, where all 12 monthly winners will duel head-to-head, and we will pick a What Is Wrong With You champion of 2022, our fifth What Is Wrong With You champion. We started the process in 2017, so this will be our sixth annual What Is Wrong With You Tournament of Champions. My bad on the math. So we are excited for that, but we got to crown a monthly champion as well. We will also continue to accept your thoughts, your comments on the YouTube stream. We are still on the YouTube stream today with 3 people in two different places. Kyle's across the glass from me, but 3 people, 3 different rooms. We got the video stream going. We've also got the Big O Tires text line. You can hit us on at 785-272-9429. One comment from the 785, Brendan. As a K-State guy, I got to admit, Brendan's T-shirt is awesome. He likes your T-shirt a lot. That's a little home field magic right there. Home Field Apparel's KU line. And beware the fog T-shirt. I actually have the exact same T-shirt. I bought that one independently. I know you have that shirt. I believe Fulton also has that shirt. So it's a very cool shirt. I will never wear it to work because I am terrified of being made fun of for twinning with you or Fulton. I already have enough people thinking me and Fulton look alike. I don't need to show up to work wearing the same shirt as him. That would be a problem. Can't do that.
So here's the issue. Mentioning that Fulton and I have the same shirt. We also have a different red KU home field apparel shirt. It's got one of the old Jayhawks on it, the 1929 edition of the Jayhawk. We have worn the same shirt to work the same day numerous times, to the point where I try to only wear this shirt on weekends or when I know I'm not going to see him, because I'm worried at this point we're going to end up wearing the same shirt. It is quite embarrassing, and I do my best to avoid it. And every day I think, oh, I'll wear that. I intentionally don't, because at this point I just assume that Fulton is also wearing the same shirt.
No, I feel that. Home Field Apparel, not an official sponsor of 580 Sports Talk yet, but we did a little early Christmas with my wife's side of the family. So Abby, my wife, and her sister, brother-in-law, and her parents, they came over to our house yesterday, and we did a gift exchange. And I added 2 more home field shirts to my collection, which is now combining T-shirts and sweatshirts. I'm at 25 home field apparel shirts. I've joined the quarter century club. I laid them all out, like, just to kind of see, okay, this is how far down the hill I've gone with that. But they are awesome shirts, cool designs, very comfortable to wear. The hoodies and crew necks are very comfortable. Again, they're not a sponsor, but we got to get them on the hook. As much money as we spent with them, I think it's the least they could do for us. Anyhow, let's move on to some more pressing matters of discussion. The Pro Bowl nods were announced yesterday. The Pro Bowl rosters were released, and it's the Pro Bowl games this year, right? So it's not really what it used to be. It's more of a flag football game than a real tackle football at this point. So it's not the same old Pro Bowl, which is definitely for the best, because the same old Pro Bowl was really boring to a lot of people, myself included. But even though we mock the Pro Bowl for being a bad exhibition of football, and you can go down the list of Pro Bowl rosters, once you get to the alternates and the alternates to the alternates and the alternates to the alternates to the alternates, things happen like Mitchell Trubisky making a Pro Bowl. So Mitchell Trubisky for the rest of his life can say he was a Pro Bowl quarterback, which is a wild thing to think about actually happening. So the meaning of a Pro Bowl selection, like, it doesn't mean what an all-pro selection means as far as like your legacy, as far as your credibility in the history of the game. But there was a great video that made the rounds yesterday from the Washington Manders Twitter, where they head coach Ron Rivera was telling that team's Pro Bowlers, and I believe they had 4 who made the team, was telling their Pro Bowlers that they were Pro Bowlers. They had video, and he called them into his office, say, "Congratulations, you've been selected to the Pro Bowl." Terry McLaurin, the punter Tress Way. I think there was one other that I'm forgetting, but there was a selection as well. Jeremy Reeves, who's their special teams guy, he got the NFC nod as the special teams specialist, so to speak. And it was very emotional to see Jeremy Reeves, a guy who was undrafted out of, I think, South Alabama, and has been up and down and on and off the practice squad all these years, carved out a niche for himself on special teams, and to get that recognized with a Pro Bowl honor, you can see that even if maybe we mock it a little bit here and there, guys who make the Pro Bowl, guys who don't, and the alternates and all of that, it still means a lot to guys to make this game.
There's no denying that. Sorry, momentary technical difficulty there. But no, there's no denying that at all. I mean, this is a valuable thing. I mean, if you're a player, it's, hey, like, people care about me. People want to see me in this game. They think highly of me as a player, et cetera, et cetera. So there's obviously a whole lot of value to that. And also, look, I know that from a media perspective, we can kind of say, oh, yeah, it's just a fan vote. It's nothing special, et cetera. You still won something. Your Pro Football Reference page forever is always going to say Pro Bowl 2022. It's always going to have that on there. You will always be remembered. You know, every broadcast says, oh, 6-time Pro Bowler. This guy made it to the Pro Bowl 4 times. The Fox graphics will say 1-time Pro Bowl selection, 4-time, whatever it means. So that video that went around was so cool. And to see people who don't normally get recognized, like, you know, if you're Tom Brady and you get a Pro Bowl nomination, it probably doesn't mean a whole lot. Like, okay, yeah, I'm the greatest to ever do it. Of course I did. But if you are, you know, a special teamer, you are a kicker, punter, you're, you know, Geno Smith just a little bit earlier during his press conference today said that, yeah, I mean, it's cool to get recognition, but, you know, I've always felt like I play this way, yada, yada. You have to imagine for him on a personal level, like, damn, I never thought I would get to this point. And to actually get to this point, that's a really big deal, and that's a really cool honor. And look, I know you only get, you know, they go down the list of all the alternates and all that, and you can get some real undeserving guys on there. You still got the accomplishment. That's something that no one can ever take away from you. So if you haven't seen that video, I would recommend everyone go check it out because it's really cool. And I think Ron Rivera and the Commanders handled it really well.
So among the Pro Bowlers for the Chiefs, you know, it's the usual suspects. Travis Kelce's a Pro Bowler, no surprise there. Patrick Mahomes, he's pretty good. He's going to the Pro Bowl. The other Chiefs who made the roster include Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey. Great recognition for those offensive linemen. Chris Jones, no surprise there. He has been named to the Pro Bowl. Tommy Townsend is the punter for the AFC. He's had a really nice year. Orlando Brown also was named to the team as one of 3 AFC offensive tackles, joined by Terron Armstead and Laramie Tunsil. And Orlando Brown has been one of the more maligned members of this Chiefs team at times this season. And we have been hard on him this year. And a lot of that is something that he brought on himself a little bit, because he decided to make the bet on himself this year. He did not sign the long-term contract extension that many thought he would. He hired an agent who had no prior experience being an NFL or sports agent, and didn't get himself the long-term deal. Decided he wanted more money, took the franchise tag. He's playing on the tag this year with the idea that the Chiefs won't franchise tag him next year. Very rare to see players get franchise tagged twice. It's a big financial penalty and salary cap ding to do that. So it's not likely they'll franchise tag him again. Either the Chiefs give him a long-term contract next year, or somebody else is going to. And early in the season, it didn't look like anybody was going to, because Orlando Brown came out of the gate and had some obviously poor performances. He did not play well in the first meeting of the year against the Chargers, for instance. And that was kind of backed up by some of the metrics and some of the stats from places like Pro Football Focus. But we haven't talked a lot about Orlando Brown the last couple of weeks, and usually that means that's a good thing. We rarely talk about offensive linemen when they're really good or when they're having good weeks, because what they're doing kind of goes unnoticed because the rest of the offense is clicking. When Patrick Mahomes has time to throw, when the Chiefs are moving the ball and scoring big points. There have also been some other things on offense, namely turnovers, that have drawn the ire and the frustration of Chiefs fans and Chiefs pundits, and kind of replaced complaining about Orlando Brown Jr. At the top of the grievance list, so to speak. But it has been a notably quiet few weeks for Orlando Brown, and quiet in a good way. So you did the digging with the Pro Football Focus numbers, and it looks to me, just doing a little bit of a read of them, that at least when it comes to his play as a pass protector, that Orlando Brown has experienced an uptick in performance the last handful of weeks. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah, I think that's entirely accurate to say. And, it's funny you mentioned that for offensive linemen, you don't want to be noticed a lot of the time. There's a Twitter user, he goes by Platinum Sombrero on Twitter, who in the midst of all the Chiefsaholic nonsense earlier in this week, and by the way, we'll be talking about Chiefsaholic coming up here in just a moment, he posted a 4-way Venn diagram on his Twitter. And for the circle conjoining Tommy Townsend and Orlando Brown, the intersecting segment says, your job is to not disappoint the team, and somehow you can't even manage to get that right. Obviously referring to Tommy Townsend's beef with Dustin Colquitt and maybe not holding the ball right on field goals and extra points. Orlando Brown, obviously those early season struggles. But we do have the numbers from PFF here that indicate that at least as of late, Orlando Brown has been kind of decent. Now you look at the overall body of work for this season. The grades for the year overall for Orlando Brown, 73.3. Now, what does that exactly mean? Is that like a grade? Is it 0 to 100? Sometimes it's hard to understand with PFF, but it is valuable to, I think, give the ranking along with that grade. That's ranked 24th among offensive tackles. So if you figure that there are 64 starting tackles in the league, 2 per team, to be 24th, that's well into the top half, around the top third of the league. That's not too bad overall. Run blocking, he's ranked 44th with a 67.4 grade, which is slightly above average. And then his pass blocking grade of 74.2, well, that's 41st in the league, which again is mediocre-ish compared to the rest of the starting tackles around the NFL. Now, it's more than just 64 because some teams will use multiple tackles for one reason or another. Some guys get benched over the course of the season, guys get injured, whatever it might be. But generally speaking, kind of mediocre when it comes to the grades for the overall body of work for the season. And the status that has come up a lot over the last couple of days about Orlando Brown, especially when it came to the voting for the Pro Bowl. And then when we found out who actually made it to the Pro Bowl, is the fact that he is tied along with, well, unfortunately, his teammate, Andrew Wiley, as well as Dennis Daly, a starting tackle for the Titans, for the most quarterback pressures allowed by an offensive tackle this year. Those 3 players, Dennis Daly of the Titans,
on Andrew Wiley and Orlando Brown. But we know Andrew Wiley is nothing special. Hell, if Lucas Niang hadn't to this point been a total bust and also been injured a bunch, he wouldn't even be playing for this Chiefs team. So that's a little more excusable because we know the kind of player he is. Orlando Brown was supposed to be a superstar caliber left tackle. He's allowed 43 quarterback pressures on the year. And by the way, if you don't know anything about Dennis Daly, I always try to kind of manicure my Twitter feed to have a fan or two or someone who covers, one or two people who cover every team in the NFL. No one in Tennessee likes Dennis Daly. That is the guy who, oh my God, we know who that is. You can come up with any of the Chiefs who played in Super Bowl 55. For me with the Packers, it was Marshall Newhouse, like that one lineman who, oh my God, this guy is the absolute worst. That's Dennis Daly. But Dan, as you mentioned, over the last couple of weeks, the numbers have actually looked a lot better for Orlando Brown. And again, it's hard to quantify offensive line play for a lot of reasons. Pro Football Focus is one tool. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it is a somewhat effective way to look at this. His pass blocking grades ever since you go all the way back to week 7, the game against San Francisco, right before the bye, that is when the Chiefs looked phenomenal. That was probably the best overall Chiefs performance of the season. In that game, he had a 72.9 grade, which is solidly in the good territory for an individual game basis. He has only had one game with a grade below 70 ever since then. He has been in the good to very good range for all but 1 week since that week 7 win over San Francisco. In the good range against Tennessee, very similar range, almost an exactly similar number in week 10 against Jacksonville. He was ranked as very good then in weeks 11 against the Chargers, 12 against the Rams, and then in week 14 against the Broncos, and then was on the upper end of good again this past week against Houston. The only lull in that area was against Cincinnati back in week 13. Much better numbers across the board over this second half to this point of the season. For comparison's sake, when we talk about the overall body of work and where things have gone wrong up until this point and why some of those overall grades are lower, week 1 in the mediocre to bad territory. Week 2 against the Chargers, his 29.1 grade, they do it on a color scale. You can't go deeper than like blood red. That's the area where Orlando Brown's grade was for that week 2 game. Above average in week 3 against the Colts, but then below average in week 4, and then mediocre-ish scores in week 5 and week 6. So the season started off terribly for Orlando Brown. That's not the kind of production you want to see out of a tackle who is A, looking for a ton of money, and B, is going on Sunday Night Football saying his alma mater is Free Money University, right? Like that's not what you want to see out of this guy. But he has been a lot better over the second half of the season. So like many things in life, I think you can view this Pro Bowl nomination one of a few ways. One, Chiefs fans just vote for all of their favorite players, just like all Kansas City fans do. And, we'll vote for Orlando Brown, sure, because he's better than Andrew Wiley. Okay. You can also look at this as it's undeserving because even though he's been playing better, his overall body of work is not good enough. There's been too many bad or mediocre games to justify that kind of honor. Or you can swing it around and say, hey, look, he struggled really early on. Who knows what other things were going on, what other circumstances, ulterior motives, whatever were going on that were impacting his play. But over the last few weeks, for all the woes that the Chiefs have had, you really can't point to Orlando Brown being one of them. And if we're talking in terms of did he earn the Pro Bowl honor, based on the last half of the season, I think you can certainly make that argument. If you're basing it on, are we worried about his offensive line play going forward? I think the answer is no. He's been as steady as anybody over the last few weeks.
And there's value in steadiness. There's value in competence at left tackle. And the Chiefs know this better than anybody because Eric Fisher was nobody's idea of a superstar, but he was steady and capable. And that can be a foundational piece on the offensive line at left tackle. At the end of the day, if Orlando Brown wants to be paid like the best left tackle in the NFL, or at least a top 5 left tackle in the NFL, he may find himself disappointed that the Chiefs don't evaluate him that way, and other teams may not either because he hasn't been that. In fact, I was a little surprised to see that his run block rating was lower than his pass block grade. I thought that given his notorious struggles with speed at times, that his run block number might be even better because he is really strong. I mean, there's a reason they call him Zeus, also because his dad was Zeus. I thought his run block grade might be even better than his pass block grade. But he has played at an acceptable level at left tackle. You don't want unacceptable at left tackle. There are a few positions that you can get away with acceptable or unacceptable. You really can't get away with that anywhere, and you really can't get away with that at left tackle. So getting that from Orlando Brown Jr. has been significant, I think, for sure. Does that mean he's going to get paid big money? Well, if he wants big money, if he ends up getting it, I don't think it should be the Chiefs to give it to him. It certainly feels like that might be a decision that another team makes. But if his contract is much more towards the middle, maybe top 10 range, but not top 5 range, that is the kind of money I think Kansas City would be wise to spend on a player who has proven over the course of his one season and now 14 games that he has played at an acceptable level, a good quality level for most of it as a Chief, protecting the blind side of Patrick Mahomes. We're overdue for a break. We got to do our December playoffs of What Is Wrong With You. So those are coming up next here on 580 Sports Talk. Monthly winners have been crowned this year on What Is Wrong With You. Today, we crown our 12th and final monthly champion. It's the December finals of What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk, and we'll get right into our matchups. We had 4 weekly champions this year, a couple of short weeks, but 4 monthly or weekly champions this month, and we think they are all very deserving. We will start with our first semifinal. Our most recent winner, this week's What Is Wrong With You winner, Chiefsaholic, the diehard Chiefs fan who decided on his way to go to Houston from Kansas City to see the Chiefs play this Sunday, would take a little side trip to try and rob a bank in Bixby, Oklahoma with a gun. He had a gun and a mask and thought he'd rob a bank. And it didn't go well for him. It did not go well for him at all. And he was arrested, and today actually made his first court appearance and formally charged with robbery and I think armed robbery and I think felony while wearing committing of a robbery while wearing a mask. I think is a felony too in Oklahoma. Anyhow, big problems for Chiefsaholic who liked to claim he was living the big lifestyle with all of his big betting slips and fancy cars and paying for paintings at the 15 of the Mahomes Foundation Gala. And now we all wonder if he had just kind of stolen it all along the way. Chiefsaholic takes on the insane Olive Garden manager from Overland Park. This is an all Kansas City area edition of What Is Wrong With You semifinal. The manager of the Olive Garden in Overland Park, who told coworkers in an email, "We are no longer tolerating any excuse for calling off. If you're sick, come prove it to us. If your dog died, bring him in and prove it to us. If it's a family emergency and you can't say, too bad, go work somewhere else." This very aggro email got this manager fired from the Olive Garden. So Chiefsaholic and the insane Olive Garden manager in this battle of KC-Mo, or KCKS, I suppose, because it was Overland Park for the Olive Garden manager. Brendan, first of all, great antlers. Second of all, who you got?
Yes, I had a little festive pair of candy cane antlers. These are from my mother-in-law. Figured that perfect time to pull them out was during What Is Wrong With You, to look as goofy as I can for the event. Look, the Olive Garden manager is a great story. It really is. She's the worst. Like, I would never work for. If I worked in retail, there's so many places, or food service, there's so many places that are looking for work right now. I would not spend a minute longer with this person as my supervisor, my manager. So I'm peacing out. She is the worst. That being said, as bad as that email was, as ludicrous as it was, this dude was lying about where he went to college. He was lying about his lifestyle. He was lying about the warehouses he manages all over the Midwest. And he was just robbing banks. He was getting his money by robbing banks in Missouri and Oklahoma. And he was committing schemes with his mom and his brother in Utah years ago. Like, this dude was just a complete piece of work. He lied to everyone. He had people. This is according to Casey Sager, the late great Craig Sager's daughter, who's a big Chiefs fan. She said she had heard of people who reached out to the 15 and the Mahomes Foundation and were like, "Yo, do you have Chiefsaholic's real name and contact info on file so that we can reach out to this guy?" He had everybody fooled, and he was just off robbing banks. Why isn't he tweeting? Because he's in prison. He's in the clink. Like, this easy win in this matchup. Easy win.
He didn't say anything about us winning the division. Is he dead? No, he's just in jail. He's in jail, and he's going to spend a lot of time there, the next 5 to 10 at least. God, what a moron. Yeah, Chiefsaholic advances in that semifinal. The other semifinal features the angry cop caller, a 67-year-old gentleman in Saitama, or Kawaguchi City, in the Saitama Prefecture in Japan, who called the police 2,060 times in a 9-day span. One call every 6 minutes, 27 man-hours spent on the line with local police, calling them, quote, big, stupid, and a word that rhymes with bass bowl, and also calling them tax thieves. Eventually, the police did show up and arrest the guy, and he admitted to the charges, adding, quote, "I knew the police would come for me someday." Yeah, because you harassed them for 9 straight days. He takes on the extremely negligent Florida man charged with child abuse after police said he irresponsibly handled an AR-15 and accidentally shot his daughter. 35-year-old Daniel Weber of Port St. Lucie, Florida, was showing his underage son how to clean his AR-15 when the TV tray set it on, tipped over, and the gun fired. So, yeah, generally, most gun owners, I would say the vast majority, know that before you clean the gun, you should make sure there's not one in the chamber. He did not. The gun fired, struck his young daughter in the hip. He told detectives he believed the gun was not loaded at the time, but you know what was loaded? Daniel Weber. He told police he'd had about 6 beers after his son ratted him out, telling the police his father drinks daily. Port St. Lucie police said the gun was irresponsibly handled and Weber's actions were extremely negligent. Extremely negligent Florida man is such a good combination of words that I'm tempted to give him the win on this one on the strength of that alone.
Yeah, look, man, you shot your own kid. Like, you shot your daughter. As we have had many times on the text line, in the YouTube comments, everything that a responsible gun owner does, not followed in this case. You're working on it on a TV tray. You're already showing in underage youth how to do it. You didn't make sure that it was not loaded. Your underage daughter is in the room as well. You were blitzed out of your mind all the way deep into a 6-pack of Busch lattes. Like, this dude is an idiot. He is a clown. The other one is hilarious. Like, this one makes me more mad than it makes me laugh, but I think it does still get the nod. Our gentleman from Saitama, that's really funny. But he also knew what was coming and kind of got what he deserved and knew he was going to get what he deserved. This other dude will never get what he truly deserves for being that much of a clown. So he's my pick as well.
So the extremely negligent Florida man moves on to face Chiefsaholic in our December final. And look, I love the extremely negligent Florida man. That's a good story. There's a lot of months that would win. Maybe I'm being a prisoner of the moment, Brendan, and you could bring me down back to earth if you need to here. But Chiefsaholic wasn't even going to go to the Houston game. That was going to be the first Chiefs game he missed in person this year. And his followers told him, no, man, you got to go. We know you've got the money. We see you betting $5,000 on 9-leg Chiefs parlays every week. We know you got the scratch to get down to Houston and see this game. You got to be there. You're Chiefsaholic. You got to be there with your wolf suit. And Chiefsaholic said, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to rob a bank on the way there just for funsies. And now he's in prison. And I can't believe how funny that story is. It is again, I don't want to be prisoner of the moment, but it is going to be a strong contender next week, I think, for the championship of the year.
At one point in the last year, someone on Twitter replied to one of Chiefsaholic's tweets and said, your tweets just keep getting worse. All your takes are bad, etc. And Chiefsaholic replied to them by saying, then just unfollow. No one's holding you at gunpoint. And then within a year, he actually held up a bank at gunpoint. He quite literally did. He is the winner. And yeah, he's got to be one of the stories with the shortest odds to win our yearly championship next week. That all-time idiot, all-time loser.
I really do believe that there's a great story, like a Catch Me If You Can type film to be made about the FBI agent now combing the archives to see if there's a pattern between bank robberies halfway between Kansas City and wherever the Chiefs are having a road game, and whether or not Chiefsaholic might have been responsible for a string of bank robberies. Because I can't believe this was his first one. I much prefer the version of this that includes him being a serial bank robber over the years on his way to Chiefs road games. That's a feature film or a Netflix documentary I will watch on day one. Chiefsaholic is your December winner of What Is Wrong With You. We got to get out for a break. Tim Fitzgerald, GoPowerCat.com, joins us next.
a Kansas State victory.
Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com typically joins us Wednesdays here on 580 Sports Talk, but gracious enough to move his time to today after K-State had a afternoon matinee basketball game yesterday. This is the Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up on 580 Sports Talk. You can find Fitz and his staff's work at GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, and you can follow Fitz on Twitter at LifeOfFitz. Fitz, the recruiting cycle is not quite in the books, but not the way it used to be after National Signing Day. But 26 new Wildcats putting pen to paper yesterday, and a class that ranks as the best that Chris Kleiman has brought in yet to Kansas State. What are your first reactions to this new crop of Wildcats on the gridiron?
Yeah, it's a really good class for Kansas State. Thanks for having me on. I mean, my regular time slot was filled. I thought you'd just throw me to the side, but no, you found a new spot.
We got a lot of love for you, Fitz.
Okay, that's good. 26 guys in this class is kind of uncharacteristically big for what we've seen the last few years now that the transfer portal's open, which would indicate to me that while they might still take some guys from the transfer portal, the two they have are, kind of filling the needs they wanted. They signed 3 junior college players, all on the defensive side of the football, so that might lessen the need for transfer portal players. But they seem to have found a really good group of young guys that they can pour into the developmental program. But more so than that, they went out and found some guys that can play early if needed, including quarterback Avery Johnson. We would assume they don't need to play him because of the presence of Will Howard, but you never know. They went out and find Asa Newsome, a great linebacker out of Iowa that might be able to play, and Trey Spivey, a 6'4" receiver that might be able to play soon, and those aren't the only guys. So this is a really strong class for K-State that as of now, or at least earlier this afternoon, ranked 29th in the nation and 5th in the Big 12. And that's high for Kansas State. That really is. And this is a program that is, overachieved from comparison of recruiting rankings to performance on the field. They won a Big 12 championship without classes like that. So this might be a really positive sign for the program.
The hashtag or the social media campaign around the signing class yesterday was Bring the Sauce. And with that in mind, I have to ask this, Fitz. What is the secret sauce to this recruiting class for Kansas State? How did a program not generally known for bringing in top 30, borderline top 25 classes nationwide managed to do it this year with this crop of players, with this coaching staff? What is the secret sauce? What do you think accounts for the success they had on the recruiting trail this year?
Step one, it was the best class in the state of Kansas that any of us can ever remember. It goes really deep into, the 20s of the number of guys that could sign Division I scholarships. It was just very impressive. K-State landed 6th in the top 12, so they got half of that upper echelon, including the best player, Avery Johnson. And, the 2 best players in the class were Kansas recruits, so that says an awful lot. But on top of that, Avery went out and helped recruit himself. He went and found guys. If you ask Trey Spivey, he played a big role in him picking Kansas State. So when a star quarterback calls you up and says, "I want to play with you," kids listen. And that's exactly what happened. So it was kind of a good convergence of the coaching staff hitting on the right notes and, some kids getting out there and helping try to add some muscle, some mustard maybe to their own recruiting class. And it all added up to some great success for K-State. And, they loaded up on some positions they really needed. They needed some receivers. They got them. Linebackers, they got them. They need some safeties in the back end of that defense and corners. They got them. Maybe, they wanted some more running backs. Only have 1 in this class, but there's still a little more time to go here. They can still go into the portal to get that if they need it.
Tim Fitzgerald is our guest, publisher of GoPowerCat.com. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can find Fitz at Life of Fitz on Twitter, and of course, all of his and the rest of his crew's great work at GoPowerCat.com. Fitz, you mentioned how much Kansas talent there is on or in this class for the Wildcats. Obviously, Avery is number 1. Jordan Allen, also a 4-star number 2, top 500 player in the country. Outside of Avery, though, and it can be a Kansas kid, it can be anyone from any part of this country. And I take Avery out of it because he's obviously the crown jewel of this class, top 10 quarterback in the country, top 70 overall prospect. Is there any one player in particular you are the most excited about that you either think could have star potential, who you think is an interesting prospect? Who would you say after Avery Johnson is the number one most intriguing recruit for you in this class?
Well, you're asking me to dig deep. You're asking me to actually use my brain on a cold day. Look, there's some guys in here that I'm really excited about, including Joe Jackson, the lone running back. Really an exciting, electric guy. Will Lee, a cornerback out of Iowa Western, comes in, will compete right away for some playing time out there. I mentioned Asa Newsom and Trey Spivey. I like both of those guys an awful lot. But one of the guys that really caught my attention was Devin Vass, offensive tackle out of Bartow, Florida. He comes in at 6'6", 275 with a background and really getting after it in the weight room. And I think he could be an offensive lineman that comes in and after a year in the program really offers some beef up front. And also keep an eye on Wesley Watson, a receiver out of College Station, Texas. He seems like a guy that can do a little bit of everything. He tests really well. Seems like he fits into the program. They addressed a lot of needs in this class and did a good job with it.
And to that point as well, and I don't mean to turn this all of a sudden into a negative thing, and the transfer portal is still there, and we talked about that a little bit. Is there any position or any area where you think maybe things weren't addressed the way they needed to be, or did this class pretty much cover all aspects and then anything bonus out of the portal or a late signing would just be a bonus?
They certainly want another running back. Now, whether that is another high school kid or someone out of the portal, that's left to be, discovered. They don't know about Deuce Vaughn. Is Deuce going to come back for his senior season or go to the league? And if he does go, maybe they want to get a couple guys. Maybe they want to get one of each, high school and a transfer to add some experience. They certainly want to find a nose tackle through the transfer portal. They needed an interior defensive lineman. They got one in this class, but you really can't count on a high school kid to come in and, play that nose tackle position that's so important to a defense. So I think that's something they'll still address the portal. And with all that said, they're up against their 85. So, that's your number of players you can have on scholarship for all programs. So pretty much if anyone, leaves, it opens it up. If anyone comes in, they're going to have someone leave. So it's going to get a little testy here coming down. I would expect more guys to go into the portal, and those guys probably being fellas that aren't seeing a whole lot of playing time will be moving on after the bowl game.
Fitz, I do want to make sure to ask you a basketball question today as well before we get into Christmas. K-State's 11-1 after yesterday's win, and I don't care who you beat. That is tremendous. It's the best start for K-State in a single season since back in the 16-17 campaign, which notably was an NCAA tournament year for this program. That Radford game in particular yesterday, that's not a very good Radford team. I mean, the Ken Pom numbers have them somewhere in the low 220s. I mean, they've got some struggles. They're not an especially talented team. They played hard. Give the Highlanders credit because they played really hard. And I know Wyatt Thompson talked about that during the broadcast as well, that they played their butts off. But obviously, K-State should be the better coach to the more talented team. Is that, or after that game, maybe we'll phrase it this way. After that game, is it more a little concerned because, hey, you should be able to put away a Radford team by more than 8 points? You shouldn't have just a 3-point game at the half, 6-point game with under a minute to go. Or is it more good vibes because, again, hey, this team hasn't been 11-1 in a long time. So as long as you get a win, that's the most important thing. What are your feelings following that win over Radford yesterday?
Well, certainly they had them on the ropes. They were, in a position to maybe blow them out by a little bit more than they ended up doing. But Radford has also had a history this season, at least, of really rallying and putting some pressure on some teams. But they don't have a good overall look on the season, but they have played some really strong games. So I think that was one of those games where K-State got up by 20. They were going to win that game, and they did kind of shift it down and cruise home. But it never really got too close, kind of like the Nebraska game. So maybe that final flurry at the end is something they need to work on. But if you look at what this team was like early in the season, where they would have lulls that almost lasted a half. Like they did that at Cal, got a big halftime lead and went to sleep. And, they've had some games this year they've made closer than they should be. But this team has grown a lot since they lost to Butler. This is a much better team than the one that won the Cayman Islands Classic. Are they ready for the Big 12? Well, we're going to find out December 31st. This team's off until then. So the players will get some time at home, little R&R for everyone associated with the program, and then come back and get ready to tip off Big 12 play. A conference that has 10 schools in it that all appear capable of making the NCAA tournament. So it's going to be a bloodbath all season long to try to climb to the top of the hill here, at least far enough up the hill where you get into the NCAA tournament. And I think Kansas State has the potential to do that, but you're right. You've got to pay attention to some of these small details to close out games for us.
Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com is our guest. It's the Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up here on 580 Sports Talk. It's a common theme in our discussions about the K-State basketball program the last year and change, I would wager, has been something along the lines of the disillusionment that K-State fans have felt with the basketball team and the feeling that it should be better and the eagerness that they have to embrace a good quality basketball team. And I keep flashing back to the crowd at T-Mobile Center on Saturday, 13,000 plus, lot of purple, lot of noise, lot of energy, and Jerome Tang doing the Wabash with the student section after that game. It sure feels like we've gotten to a point where this Kansas State fan base, at the very least the students, but it feels like the fan base is getting very, very close to that point where they're back in love with their basketball team and their basketball coach.
I agree. And this was a topic that came up on Twitter yesterday. Have you ever seen the fan base more engaged with football and basketball at the same time? Well, it's hard to find that. I mean, maybe 2012 came up, but people are psyched about the state of the football program. And, part of it is the honeymoon keeps going on. And Jerome Tang mentioned it after the game in Kansas City. People keep saying it'll end, but it just seems to get better and better. Look, this isn't a team that's just 11-1. They're not winning ugly. They are fun to watch. Naquan Tomlin is a dunk machine, and he had a couple in that game against Radford that were simply remarkable, the type of dunks I just haven't seen in Bramlage Coliseum by the home team very often. A drive down the baseline, cut into the lane just when you think he's about to shoot a little 8-foot jump shot, he just reaches out and dunks the ball violently, and you're like, I just didn't even imagine that was where we were going with this. And then an alley-oop thrown well behind his head. He reaches out with one hand, catches it from back of his head, and just swoops down and dunks it. It's just a really athletic team, fun to watch. And Keontae Johnson is a man. He's got a little Mitch Richmond in him. He's strong. He's able to shoot it outside. He can compete inside. He makes it look so easy. It almost looks casual. And on top of that, then you've got Marquise Noel playing at a much higher level than he ever did last year. Another double points assist against Radford. He has been so integral to the success of this team because he can hit big shots, but he is creating great scoring opportunities for his teammates.
Tim Fitzgerald is our guest from GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. He joins us weekly for the Azure Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. Fitz, thanks for being flexible and joining us today, and have a very Merry Christmas. We'll talk to you next week.
Always flexible for you guys, and yet I still can't touch my toes. Very strange.
You and me both, brother. Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com. We got to take a break. 5 o'clock hour coming up next. Let's get it. Final hour of the day in the final hour of a short week here on 580 Sports Talk. We are off tomorrow. We are off until Tuesday. This is the last you'll hear from us before Christmas. Dan Lucero, Brendan Dworzinski, and Kyle Manthe across the glass. Brendan Dworzinski is in a secure location with 1,000 security guards stationed outside the door, making sure he doesn't ditch me and leave me to do this by myself for the rest of the program. And we are joining you for one more hour of 580 Sports Talk today. It is a jam-packed final hour of the show. We got our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines that we want to get to. We also are going to preview Thursday Night Football tonight. Who'd have thunk it? Jags-Jets is interesting. I want to watch the Jaguars and the Jets. I wouldn't have guessed that before week 1. I'm not sure I would have guessed that before week 12. But here we are, week 16, and the Jags and the Jets are playing a Thursday Night Football game with some real stakes for both teams. So the Jags are lurking in that AFC South race, and the Jets are trying to grab a wild card spot. So a bit of intrigue there. We, Brendan and I, as is our tradition, have some same game parlays to throw at you for Thursday Night Football. And we'll speak with the voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, get his thoughts on Sunday's win over the Texans and look ahead to Saturday's contest at Arrowhead against the Seattle Seahawks. Speaking of that matchup, that is where we're going to start our Blue Dot of Kansas sports headlines. They're brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Whether it's your AC, your heating, bigger concern this time of year, your plumbing, your drains, whatever you've got that can be fixed or needs fixed, Blue Dot of Kansas can help you out. Go to their website and see what they can do for you at bluedotkansas.com. We start our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines with the injury report for Week 16 for the Kansas City Chiefs. One player has been ruled out for Saturday, and that is Jody Fortson, the tight end, still dealing with an elbow injury, did not practice all week. He's not going to play on Saturday. Colin Saunders is doubtful for Saturday. He did not practice all week. There's a bit of a bug running through the locker room and presumably the defensive lineman meeting room in particular, as a lot of defensive linemen have been dealing with a bit of a illness the last week or so. You might remember Chris Jones was actually questionable for the Houston game, and he's been on the participation report all week with an illness, but Chris Jones has no designation. He's been a full practice participant the last 2 days. Mike Dana was a full participant today, but because of illness, he didn't practice Tuesday or Wednesday. He is listed as questionable for the Chiefs, as is safety Deon Bush, who's also fallen ill, didn't practice Wednesday, but was a full participant today. All other Chiefs were full participants in practice today. Noah Gray, Najee Johnson, Lucas Niang, Derek Nottie, Isaiah Pacheco, L'Jarius Sneed, and Kadarius Toney, all full participants. Regarding players who might come off of injured reserve, there's a decent chance you'll see one Saturday, just maybe not the one you were expecting. As Andy Reid told the media today that he thinks there's a good chance Blake Bell could see his first action of 2022 and be reinstated from injured reserve. That would be a boost, certainly, for the Chiefs. Without Jody Fortson, would get them back to having 3 tight ends they could put on the field. Mecole Hardman, though, he might not quite be ready to be activated from injured reserve. Now, that's not the worst thing in the world. He's still in his 21-day window. The Chiefs could activate him before Week 17, and that would be just fine. But after initial optimism this week that Hardman would make his return, Andy Reid today said not so fast. So I wouldn't expect Hardman to be activated from IR. It feels certainly more likely that if there is any Chief to be activated from the injured reserve, it would be Blake Bell. So that's your Chiefs injury report. Fortson out, Saunders doubtful, Dana and Bush questionable. The Seahawks injury report is not a pretty one to read, as they will be without 3 key contributors for Saturday's game. Wide receiver Tyler Lockett, nose tackle Al Woods, and safety Ryan Neal all did not practice all week and have been ruled out for the game. Tyler Lockett, that's no surprise. He was dealing with a broken finger, had to have surgery on it. The hope for the Seahawks is that this is the only game Lockett will miss, though there is a chance he could miss more time. Ryan Neal's knee injury removes from the defensive equation one of their better playmakers in the secondary, and probably the guy who was going to match up with Travis Kelce for most of the afternoon on Saturday. So that's a big, big loss for the Seahawks defense. And so is Al Woods, the ageless nose tackle, who's been the best run stuffer on a team that's very bad at stopping the run. They've been bad against the run most of the year with Al Woods. I can only imagine what it's going to look like without him, as he is out for Saturday. 4 Seahawks are listed as questionable, including the top 2 running backs on the depth chart, Kenneth Walker III and DJ Dallas. Walker, with an ankle injury, didn't practice all week. DJ Dallas didn't practice Tuesday, was limited the rest of the week. Also, tight end Noah Fant is questionable. He was limited today after not practicing Tuesday, Wednesday with a knee injury. And wide receiver Marquise Goodwin went in the opposite direction on the participation report that you like to see, with a wrist injury. He went from a full participant Tuesday to limited Wednesday to a DNP today. So Goodwin, who's one of Seattle's better deep threats, one of the fastest guys still in the NFL, is questionable as well. No injury designations for other Seahawks. There are only 3 others on the participation report for Thursday. Linebacker Bruce Irvin, linebacker Jordan Brooks, and linebacker Uchenna Nwosu all will go for the Seahawks. Nwosu's their best pass rusher. Brooks, their leading tackler at middle linebacker, and the green dot helmet wearer for that Seahawk defense. Your thoughts, Brendan, on the injury report? What is impactful, and do you think Blake Bell, if he's activated, could potentially have an impact on Saturday?
You know, when it comes to the Belldozer, I actually do. And I think that Andy Reid would like to get him back in there as well, because while he and Fortson are not the same kind of tight end, you can still do different things when Blake Bell is in there. And honestly, if he's ready to go, if he's healthy, and you have the Chiefs with a 1st down and goal at the 1-yard line, you know who's probably going to get the snap? It's probably going to be Blake Bell. At some point, once he gets healthy, you're going to see that package again. You can do more with him when you get him on the goal line. You can get him out into routes. You can do something with him in the passing game. He's obviously a good blocker. I think the Chiefs really like what Blake Bell brings to the table. There's a reason they brought him back as a free agent for the 2nd time in a 3-year stretch when they signed him again this past year. So I think there's going to be value to getting him back as soon as you can get him back. Now, to not have Hardman, that does stink, because I think, at least from our show's perspective, and I think for a lot of people, we're really looking forward to getting him back because he finally was doing more. He was finally in a role that was more suitable to what his strengths are before he got hurt. So to not have him out there, that is pretty tough. Hopefully he can come back next week against the Broncos and he's not out for the season. I imagine they activate him even if he's not able to go and actually participate next week, just to make sure they can indeed get him back for week 18 and into the postseason. So Hardman, tough. They probably don't need him. Bell, I do think he is going to get some legitimate run if he's able to get on the field. On the other side, because otherwise, I mean, for the Chiefs, I'm not overly worried about any of this. I am a little bit surprised that Colin Saunders was listed as being out due to illness or doubtful due to illness, not due to a strong case of the Twitter fingers. But other than that, I mean, pretty run-of-the-mill for the Chiefs. For the Seahawks, and we talked about this during the 3 o'clock hour of the show, Dan, I mean, this team, it's not just that they're missing 3 really important players. You mentioned Ryan Neal, and you obviously have better insight into Neal, who name recognition-wise is a very under-the-radar player, but has been very effective for Seattle this year. To not have him, to not have Al Woods as a stabilizing force at the nose tackle spot, and then to not have one of the best, most underrated wide receivers in the NFL, as we know in Tyler Lockett, that's obviously huge. But your starting running back, Kenneth Walker III, questionable. He's been banged up. DJ Dallas, his backup, he's been banged up. Tight end, Noah Fant, he's been banged up as well. You mentioned some of the other guys, Marquise Goodwin. So Tyler Lockett, great deep threat. If he's not able to go, you would expect Marquise Goodwin would possibly have a bigger role as the over-the-top guy. Well, if he's banged up, might not be able to go, that again changes things. So that is tough for this Seattle team to just have so many guys who, even if they can play, are just dinged up. They're so far from 100%. And no team is 100% at this point of the season, but it does feel like the Seahawks are really battling through to try to seal up one of those final playoff spots in the NFC playoff picture. Let's continue on with our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Visit them online at blue.kansas.com. We will stick with the NFL. We've got a couple business of the NFL headlines to get to today, but this one we actually teased just a little bit, and unknowingly so, when we were talking about sports ownership earlier on in the week. That was on Tuesday when we talked about Matt Ishiba, who is going to be the new owner of the Phoenix Suns and the Phoenix Mercury, and the $4 billion he is going to pay to acquire the NBA and WNBA franchises in the state of Arizona. Well, today, according to Mike Ozanian, a writer for Forbes, multiple suitors are now lining up to bid on the Washington Commanders. In fact, according to this report from Forbes and Ozanian, multiple bids have come in for the Commanders already, quote, well north of $7 billion. That is according to people who are familiar with the process of the sale. Now, other things along with just the franchise that are up for sale, that includes FedEx Field, which really, more importantly, that's the property that FedEx Field is currently on. Because the minute that team gets sold and the legislators in that area say, oh, no more Dan Snyder, sure, we'll approve a new stadium, it is getting bulldozed. They are turning that into rubble in an instant because that place is a total mess, a total dump. So FedEx Field, as it currently stands, the 264 acres around the field as well, plus the 150 acres at the team's headquarters in Ashburn, Virginia. Daniel Snyder, the current owner of the Commanders, he paid $750 million for this franchise. So despite treating people like garbage, despite tons of federal governmental inquiries, despite running a terrible franchise, despite being generally unlikable and generally unliked even by most of the other owners who all love each other and love to protect their own money, he's going to come out of this after buying the team for less than $1 billion. $750 million back in 1999 is going to come out of this with more than $6 billion in profit. That's the business of the NFL, but that is really, it just sounds unfair for a guy who has been such an awful owner like Daniel Snyder has been ever since he bought the franchise. Now, we did hear back a couple months ago that Snyder and his wife had hired Bank of America to look into selling part or all of the team. Oh yeah, he's going to sell everything in that franchise if they're going to get over $7 billion back for it. For what it's worth, Forbes, who again is reporting on this story, valued the Commanders at $5.6 billion back in August when they did their annual valuation of all NFL teams. And remember, the last NFL franchise that was sold, the Denver Broncos, went for $4.65 billion to the Walton Penner family, obviously of Walmart fame. So again, to rehash a point we brought up earlier in the week, Dan, feels like the Broncos got sold for a bargain to the Walton Penner family, given what some of these other prices around the sports world are. $7 billion, that is a lot of money. That is a lot of money that the NFL is going to be happy to see exchanged hands, because it means Daniel Snyder, he's out of the paint. They're going to get a brand new stadium in the greater Washington, D.C. area, and maybe they'll have an owner who actually knows what he's doing in Washington going forward.
That's just so much money. And it's kind of funny how it ends up feeling like a bit of a penalty, right? Like the penalty for Dan Snyder being a terrible owner is he gets to cash out. And that was a penalty for Robert Sarver in Phoenix. It was a penalty for Donald Sterling in Los Angeles. Your penalty is you get to sell this thing that's way, 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 way more valuable than it was when you bought it. Like that doesn't seem like much punishment at all, really, when you think about how much money that they get to walk away with. But you do lose a fancy toy, and you do lose your membership to one of the more exclusive rich guy clubs that there is. There's but so many rich guy clubs, and this is one of them. And if you're out the club, there's no getting back in. So there's, I suppose, some punishment in that, even if he can probably afford to buy his own rich guy club and have himself be the only member if he wants. It's an obscene amount of money. Another NFL business headline for you here on 580 Sports Talk on our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines. It is official. We teased this on Tuesday, but it is official. The NFL has announced a multi-year agreement on Thursday for Google to distribute the league's Sunday ticket package of out-of-market Sunday afternoon games on YouTube TV and YouTube primetime channels. It's a 7-year deal worth a little more than $2 billion per season. So you're looking at north of $14 billion for NFL Sunday Ticket. The NFL had been seeking $2.5 billion per season for the package, so they didn't quite get what they were looking for. They came up maybe $500 million per year short. It could still reach that total, however, since the league retains commercial rights to bars and restaurants and is in the midst of selling those rights. So NFL fans will be able to watch NFL Sunday Ticket if they are a YouTube TV subscriber, or you can purchase it as a standalone a la carte item on YouTube primetime channels that would essentially enable you to watch the Sunday Ticket package on any streaming device through YouTube. Viewers have typically paid around $300 to $400 a season for the package. I don't imagine that price is going to go down appreciably, and the price point for that, and also the exclusivity of it with DirecTV previously had been my biggest barriers towards acquiring it. But now that it's going to be easier and you can stream it from any of your devices with YouTube TV or YouTube primetime channels, I think that's going to make some people more willing to take the plunge, and I think they'll get more subscribers out of it. I really do.
I agree with you, because I think one of the biggest barriers, not just for you, but for a lot of people, is, man, I got to pay however much I'm paying for DirecTV already. And then on top of it, I've got to pay the $300 for the season to get NFL Sunday Ticket. You don't need to do that now. I mean, that is extremely valuable, because you can say, look, I really want Sunday Ticket. I live out of market, and I live in Topeka, but I'm a huge fan of the Commanders. Boom, there's an example for you. You don't have to subscribe to multiple services now to do this. You can just say, hey, I'll pay the $300 to get Sunday Ticket, see all of my team's games. Boom, you're done. You're set. Good position to be in. I do think that's going to end up being a good deal for business. I think, not that this really impacts just the casual fan like you and I think DirecTV is probably going to get the deal for the bars and restaurants again, because a lot of bars and restaurants already have DirecTV, because that's who's had Sunday Ticket for the last couple of decades. So I figure they're still going to have it. So if you prefer to go out to a bar or restaurant, it'll still be easy for you to end up getting to watch those games and still be able to enjoy those when they come on. This is I think, really smart deal when it comes to going into the future. And I think that's pretty obvious at this point. And yes, we make the jokes about new technology and stuff all the time on this program, and people make it on Twitter, Facebook, wherever on social media, that, all right, well, when this goes into effect next year, be ready to get on the phone and tell your dad where to set up the YouTube channel and where to be able to watch the games, because he wants to watch, but he doesn't know how it works. He has the smart TV, doesn't use any of the functions. We all make those jokes. But in terms of, hey, we want people who are more adept at being online to be able to subscribe to this. And as traditional, quote unquote, forms of media and consuming media start to be phased out more and more over time, we want to already be ahead of the game. So it seems like smart business for the NFL, seems like smart business for Google. They got Alphabet Corporation, Google, they got money. They got money out the wazoo. They could have paid more for this if they had really wanted to. So it feels like it's a good deal overall. The one thing people are still going to clamor for is the single team package. And we talked about that on Tuesday as well, when we talked about this news a little bit. I can understand the peaks of it. I can understand the downsides of it, both from a consumer and from a corporate standpoint. That's for certain what would get me to do it. I was just telling my wife the other day, we were talking about this news. I said, look, if they could offer me $120 for the year, I could just guarantee I could watch every Packers game. Hell yeah, I would do that in a heartbeat. There's no doubt about that. But then, teams like the Packers or the Cowboys, well, they're on Sunday Night Football all the time. They always get a Thursday night game. They always get a Monday game. They might get a Thanksgiving Day game, a Saturday, whatever it might end up being. And in that case, then, well, shoot, I just paid $120 and I only actually got like 8 games. Imagine if you're an out-of-market Chiefs fan. All their games are national TV anyway. You'd get like 5 games a year at that point in the regular Sunday window. So that at some point will be the next step. But business-wise, I think this makes a lot of sense, both for the NFL and for Google. I've got one more headline for you, Dan. This one also coming from the NFL. Just a couple pieces of news and notes about quarterback play this week. We already had the big news yesterday about the quarterback situation going on in Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill, like we've done for the year. Nick Foles taking over for Matt Ryan in Indianapolis. Well, for this week, we now know, according to John Harbaugh of the Baltimore Ravens earlier today, that it will be Tyler Huntley, Snoop Huntley. I didn't know he went by Snoop, but now he goes by Snoop. He is going to get the start again for the Ravens this week. Jackson, a little bit more optimistic he'd be able to return from his PCL injury, but unfortunately, he's not quite ready to go. So it will be Tyler Huntley once again. Ravens offense looked pretty darn good last year when he had to play. It has not looked good this year when Huntley has been in there. I'm not sure if it's a Greg Roman thing, if it's a Huntley thing, just a we don't have Lamar thing. But Baltimore needs Lamar Jackson back in the worst way. They're in the playoff picture right now, but they definitely need him back ASAP. Also, from the quarterback front, it is official from Philadelphia. Gardner Minshew is going to get the start for Philly coming up on Saturday against the Dallas Cowboys.
That's going to do it for our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines. They are brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Go through the peak performance safety check with those folks. They'll check your furnace, AC, and plumbing once a year, all for one low price. Visit their website and see what they can do to make your business or residence more comfortable. BlueDotKansas.com. We'll take a short break. When we come back, a look ahead to Thursday Night Football with a couple of same-game parlays for you from FanDuel. That's next year on 580 Sports Talk. $5:29 on 580 Sports Talk. Dan and Brendan with you. Kyle on the ones and twos. Mitch Holthus joins us in about 5 minutes or so. The voice of the Chiefs will come on to preview Chiefs Seahawks, what will be a blustery day at Arrowhead Stadium on Saturday. Week number 16 kicks off tonight with the Jaguars and the Jets, and this one's got a little more intrigue than I think any of us would have expected or had any right to expect coming into this season. The Jaguars just one game back in the AFC South, and with a win over the Titans already, could end up with a tiebreaker. The Jets, meanwhile, just trying to hang in the AFC wildcard race. As is the tradition around these parts, we like to, with a little help from the good folks at FanDuel, put together some same-game parlays for you to perhaps put a little spicy action on if you're watching tonight's game. Brendan, what's your same-game parlay for tonight?
For me tonight, I'm taking a little bit of a risk here, so I'm going to go with the Trevor Lawrence alternate passing total. Just has to go over 200 yards. That's minus 168. I'm going to go with an alternate over, just a little bit below the listed over at 35.5. That's minus 158. And then I'm going to go with the anytime touchdown. I'm not sure I've hit on an anytime touchdown market all season long. I'm going to give it a shot here. Christian Kirk, he's been hot recently. His relationship with Trevor Lawrence is developing really nicely. I'm going to go Christian Kirk anytime touchdown. That's plus 280. 549 plus 549, the odds for my 3-leg same gamer for tonight. What do you got?
Well, my 3-legger tonight, I'm going under the first half total of 18.5. Going to be a cold night. I think the two teams will get off to a slow start. I'm going with the under 18.5 in the first half at minus 110. Going over for Zonovan Knight's rushing yards. He's emerged as the top rushing option for the Jets. He's getting more carries than Michael Carter of late, and I suspect it will be another night of high volume in the cold for Zonovan Knight. I like him to go over 59.5 rush yards. That's minus 110. And I'm fading the public. The public is all over the Jags in this one because they are the underdogs. In fact, since this morning, the line has gone up. It's now Jacksonville plus 2.5 as 2.5-point underdogs. I got the Jets this morning at minus 1.5. I'm siding with the pros over the Joes. I'm fading the public this week, and I'm thinking the Jets find a way at home on a short week to win a game they absolutely have to win. Do I feel great about wagering on Zach Wilson? No, I don't. But do I feel good about fading the public? Generally, yes. Generally, yes, I do. Plus 434 for that 3-leg same game parlay. And speaking of FanDuel, Santa Barkley is coming to town, and he's delivering $20 million in gifts this holiday season to all FanDuel customers. It doesn't matter if you've been naughty or nice. St. Chuck has something for everyone. Just check your FanDuel app for no sweat same game parlays, bonuses, and all sorts of stuff that'll fill you with holiday cheer. If you're new to FanDuel, now is a great time to sign up. And remember to use my promo code Lucero. The app is easy to use. They're always hooking you up with great promotions. And when you win, you get paid instantly. There's a great promotion for Kansas users right now. Plus 100 odds for the Chiefs to complete a pass on Saturday. That's the bet. All they got to do is complete a pass. It doesn't have to be Mahomes. It could be Chad Henne. It could be Travis Kelce on trick play. It could be anybody.
Dan, I got to jump in front real quick. If you're traveling for the holiday, bet that right now because some of us were not so lucky and crossed state lines before it went active. So if you are leaving town before you get it, make sure you bet before you leave town. You don't want to miss out on that because that is the best deal you're going to get between now and the end of the year.
Free money, folks. FanDuel's giving you free money with that one. So see for yourself why FanDuel is America's #1 sports book and get in the holiday spirit with $20 million in gifts from Santa Barkley. Just remember to use my promo code Lucero at sign up. You must be 21 and present in Kansas. Prize total dependent on customer participation. Wager requirements apply. Gifts awarded as non-withdrawable site credit or free bets. See FanDuel for terms and conditions at FanDuel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com. Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Chiefs, joins us after this break on 580 Sports Talk. After 3 straight road games, the Kansas City Chiefs are back at home sweet home at Arrowhead this Saturday for a Christmas Eve clash with the Seattle Seahawks. They'll return home as once again the conquerors of the AFC West after their win over Houston on Sunday guaranteed them the 7th straight AFC West championship. To relive that, look ahead to Saturday. We welcome in the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, who joins us every Thursday, courtesy of our friends at Azura Credit Union and Hy-Vee. And Mitch, it was not the blowout that many maybe expected coming in. The Texans deserve a lot of credit. They are playing hard for Lovie Smith, and they made the Chiefs work a little overtime on Sunday. But when it came down to it, the defense forcing a turnover was the crucial moment there in that overtime. How big was it for the defense to make a game-swinging play like that, forcing the fumble in overtime that led directly to Jerick McKinnon's walk-off touchdown?
It was huge, but they've done it now 2 consecutive weeks. I think what's overlooked about this defense is they've made the plays when they've had to. Don't forget in Denver, Patrick Mahomes threw an interception and essentially a short field for Denver, and a touchdown would put them ahead by 1 TDT. And Chris Jones got to Brett Rippon, the interception by L'Jarius Sneed. So then tee it up again the second consecutive week, and the Chiefs do it again with the fumble recovery by Willie Gay Jr. We had some fun with that in doing what he did, how he did it. But still, it was 2 straight weeks. I think people kind of overlook the fact that this defense, with sometimes not the glitzy numbers, is making the critical play.
They gave up the defense 24 total points, and 14 of those coming off of Chiefs turnovers, as in both scenarios Houston was able to start in Kansas City territory. Andy Reid's never had a team turn a ball over as many consecutive weeks as this Chiefs team has. 9 straight weeks now. And that's a number that I'm sure is cause for alarm at one Arrowhead Drive. But the beauty of that number, Mitch, and I have to imagine the focus of this offense is, if you clean that up, if you can clean those numbers up, the offense outside of the turnovers has been operating at a very high level, particularly Patrick Mahomes, who had one of the most outstanding games of his career on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, he's 20 consecutive completions. If he gets 6 consecutive completions to start this game as your first nugget of the night against Seattle on Saturday, it'll be an all-time National Football League record. So that's something we'll keep an ear and eye on to start the game. But let's go back to the turnovers. Now, problematic, obviously, at -6 with 15 takeaways and 21 giveaways. But what's more problematic is what you've alluded to if you keep digging in further. The Chiefs, and this is why, I'm not using this as a negative stat. If people listen to Defending the Kingdom podcast that Matt and I just did, Matt McMullen, the senior team reporter of the Chiefs, to me, it's, as you've alluded to, almost a positive stat that if the Chiefs clean that up just some, then what could happen with this team positively? The Chiefs have allowed 76 giveaway points. So it's not just the giveaways, it's what happens, what's the result of them. And if you think of the short fields that the Chiefs have given the opponents, think of last week's game against Houston. You give them the ball at the 17-yard line. Well, that's almost an automatic 7. I don't care if you're a 1-12-1 team when you look at the numbers of the NFL. So you think, well, wait a minute. If you clean this up just half, by 50%, with the way the offense is playing, the way that Mahomes is playing, this team could go on a big-time surge here in these last 3 games.
We are talking to the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, joining us here on 580 Sports Talk. As always, brought to you by Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. Mitch joins us every Thursday, bottom of the 5 o'clock hour during the Kansas City Chiefs season. So, Mitch, this is sort of I guess you could go a lot of different ways in answering this question, but to build on what you've already given us from those first 2 questions from Dan, what is maybe the biggest learning experience that the Chiefs can take from this game against Houston that they can then apply to Seattle and then to Denver and then to Las Vegas beyond that? What can you take from this game if you are the Chiefs and say, hey, we did this once, we need to do it differently. How are we going to do it differently going forward? What might that one pivotal point be?
Well, I think there's probably one for every phase of the game. I think what Patrick Mahomes did, and I think that's the first one on offense, was learn from the Denver game, where Denver was giving him completions that he decided to go someplace else, and that led to the 3 interceptions, which kept the Broncos in the game. If I mentioned even just the first one, the Chiefs are going to blow them out. The thing, so I'd say if it's there, take it, and then execute it for offense. Meaning, it's going to be cold weather on Saturday. So if you're underneath on a route at 8 yards, you got to catch it and understand then even if you advance it, that's where the danger comes into play, because that's where a lot of these NFL turnover punch-outs are coming, is on after big plays. Going back to the turnovers, 21 turnovers by the Chiefs. There have been 10 enemy touchdowns. But if you look at 6, I believe, of the turnovers were after the Chiefs deep in opponent territory or after a big gain. Think of Kelsey's fumble against the Bengals. That's after a big gain. So lesson learned here is take what the defense will give you. Just take it. But when you take it, understand, don't give a takeaway away, and understand that the team's coming to rip your flesh apart. And then Seattle does that very well. They got 21 takeaways. That's probably the biggest part of their defense. On the defensive side, it would be get off the field. 3rd and 6, get off the field. 3rd and 8, get off the field. Even though the Chiefs are 19th in the NFL in third down conversions the last 2 weeks, it has been somewhat maddening that they had a chance to get off the field with 3rd down and 6 or more and couldn't get off the field against the Broncos or the Texans. And then in special teams, it's just a click away. It's just one click away from getting big plays. And I mean in every phase. Now, Tommy Townsend made the Pro Bowl, and I'm thrilled about it because he deserves it. He's obliterating net punting this year. The last 2 weeks, it's underrated too of what he's done to prevent the upset because of flipping the field. Think about the overtime against Houston. The Chiefs they get first possession, but they got a punt. And if he skanks a punt, all it takes is a Houston field goal by Keami Fairbairn, who's good, and you're going to have this devastating loss. Instead, he punts the ball down to the 13. That sets up the defensive sequence. But in the return game, in the coverage game, it is, a click away, really close for something really good to happen. So all 3 of those phases, it's a loaded answer. It's kind of a loaded question. If you look at those 3, this team, again, could just go on a complete surge over the next 3 weeks and head into the playoffs with a lot of momentum.
When it comes to those special teams issues that are, like you said, just a click off, and I think even, the more untrained eye would feel the same way about that man, there's just something slightly off. And obviously there was it always comes in the modern era, but the social media drama over some of the holds on the kicks and all of that. What do you think it is going to take to get those things figured out? I think the entire NFL world has faith in Dave Toub, but, does it take just personnel working on things during practice leading up to a game? Is it just a matter of once it happens, it'll all work smoothly? Is there a way, Mitch, to kind of point to what it will take to be able to take care of these things and get them all back in sync for special teams?
I think it's just to recalibrate awareness of assignment, and then don't reach out and take a chance. Let's say on a block on a return. And this happens in a split second. This is easier said than done. But just that one element of I think I can do this, and it's a reach block, and it's a penalty. I know it sounds like Andy Reid, but you've got the fundamentals have been laid out there. Now, the whole Tommy Townsend hold thing was a little bit disconcerting from the fact that then social media reacts to Colquitt's Twitter and think, it's Tommy Townsend's fault. And so let's go back to the recalibration point. That's protection, that's snap, that's hold, and that's kick. Harrison, in getting him into a groove, I think is important the next 3 weeks. But when you miss one left and then you miss it right, and to blame it on the hold or laces or whatever, that's where Dave Toub's answer yesterday, I think, resonated, where it's everything, but Tommy Townsend's not that bad a holder. And it's just a matter of Butker, I think, probably relaxing a bit. It's just like the golfers out here listening, the gals and guys that golf, and you think, I just hit it left out of bounds, and now I'm going to do all this readjusting, and now I hit it right out of bounds. That's a little bit where Harrison's at. So in his case, just relax, man. Just relax, and maybe less analysis for everybody else. It's just recalibrate the concentration here, because when you get tired, when you play a little bit injured, this late in the season, you can lose some focus, or just it's human nature. You're just not going to be as sharp as you were at the beginning of the year. So somehow resharpen it in special teams in every phase, not just place kicking.
Our guest is Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs. He joins us Thursdays here on 580 Sports Talk, courtesy of Azure Credit Union and Hy-Vee. Mitch, the Seattle Seahawks come to town on Saturday. It's been a season of peaks and valleys for Pete Carroll's Seahawks, a 6-3 start, now 1-4 in their last 5, and some critical injury absences for the Seahawks. No Tyler Lockett on offense, no Ryan Neal, one of their top defensive players, and no Al Woods up on that defensive front as well. Without Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf becomes the main piece of this Seahawks passing attack. And there are a couple of other guys, Marquise Goodwin and Noah Fant, whose status for Saturday is up in the air. They are both questionable. That could also affect the weapons at Geno Smith's perusal. But with DK Metcalf, what needs to be done? How do the Chiefs take him away and try and make this Seahawks team a little less multidimensional in the passing game?
Well, you can't sleep on Marquise Goodwin here, who's been around a long time and is very capable, but Tyler Lockett's special. I mean, we don't have to tell people around here that. He might be the best route runner I've ever seen. And I saw it at college when I remember Iowa State triple teamed him and he still got open. He's phenomenal. Now, you put him with Metcalf, and it's one of the better 1-2 punches in the league. In fact, 14 times in their career, they have had a touchdown each in a game. There are 4 teams in the NFL right now that have 2 receivers that have 70-plus catches. The Chiefs are one of those, with Juju Smith-Schuster now with 71 catches. Kelsey's got 91. But the Seahawks are one of the other 4 because of the both 70, 79, I think 74 with Lockett and with Metcalf. But you take Tyler Lockett out of the game, it's really hard to single cover Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf's game is different. Think of him, and this is power versus finesse a little bit. You take Lockett out, now you can roll some coverage to Metcalf. Again, you don't sleep on Marquise Goodwin or the Seattle tight ends. Mentioned Fant's injury, and Kenneth Walker III he's been on the injured list this week too. That's their main running back, the rookie at Michigan State. But you can roll some coverage out of Metcalf because Metcalf's routes are coming on long, deep balls, right? Think about Mike Williams of the Chargers here. That's where Metcalf gets his. And Metcalf's probably the most powerful receiver in the National Football League. But if you can roll a second guy over there on him, especially on deep passes, it will help. And you can shade that a little more with Lockett out of the game. Big break for the Chiefs that Tyler won't play. And I know Tyler was excited. We had Kevin, his dad, on Chiefs Kingdom show Monday night, and he goes, yeah, he was really looking forward to this. But he had surgery, actually, as Kevin was on the show with us. Tyler had surgery.
Mitch, the confluence of events conspiring with the Chiefs offense and the Seahawks defense couldn't be more fortuitous, I think, for the Chiefs, in that their running game continues to find its stride. Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon both were very productive on the ground against Houston, and they go up against a Seattle team that has gotten gashed on the ground in recent weeks, and again is without their top defensive tackle, Al Woods. Does this feel like another opportunity for the Chiefs to continue to put their flag in the ground as a rushing attack and get Pacheco and McKinnon and maybe even Ronald Jones as well in a rhythm with the ground game, particularly given that the weather might favor a ground-oriented attack on Saturday?
Yeah, again, let's go back to what I said. The main positive, if you will, if you're a Seahawk fan to the defense, has been their 21 takeaways. This is a very opportunistic team that's going to rip the ball away from you. Think of Tariq Woolen, their freak corner out of UTSA. The 6'4", 210-pound corner's got 6 interceptions. And then Quadre Diggs is also a guy that tries to rip the ball loose. But the run defense, and you've talked about and asked about it, jumps off the page. Here are some nuggets for you about the Seattle defense. Houston's the only team worse in the league, but the Seattle Seahawks have allowed chunk runs. They've allowed 5 runs of 50 yards or more. The league average is 1. They have allowed 5 straight games, 100-plus yards rushing on the ground. If it is 6 in a row, if the Chiefs can get 160-plus yards rushing in this game, it will be the worst in the NFL since the 1995 Arizona Cardinals. Now, you're saying the elements would help in the run game. You've got your whole left side of the Chiefs offensive line that made the Pro Bowl. You can argue that Trey Smith at right guard could have, should have made it. But your left tackle, your left guard, your center are all Pro Bowl selections. Turn it loose and let it rip. And take care of the ball. Go back to the concentration and recalibration. But this could be a game where the Chiefs just get chunk runs. Now, just run the ball effectively, but you could get 30, 40, maybe a 50-yard run in this game.
Mitch Holthus is the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, and he joins us every Thursday here on 580 Sports Talk. Again, brought to you by Azure Credit Union and Hy-Vee. The Chiefs and the Seahawks. Home sweet home. Mitch Holthus back in his home broadcast booth on Saturday. Mitch, have a great call and a very Merry Christmas.
For a while, boys, you know what's going to be interesting about this game?
What's that?
I'm banging the drum before the game.
Hey, now. How about that?
I'm banging the drum before the game. There is a chance that I will do the first series of the game from the drum deck. So back in my home booth later, but I talked to Coach yesterday. I said, if you could stand out there for 3 hours, I could stand up on that drum deck for 30 minutes. Clark Hunt, the, of course, chairman and CEO of the team, found out I was doing it a week ago, Friday. He goes, dude, you know how cold it is up there? So at 10 degrees and whatever minus wind chill it's going to be bundled up. But it may be must listen or watching a train wreck. But after I pound the drum to get the crowd fired up, I'll do hopefully part of the game from up there.
Hey, if you're calling an opening drive touchdown for the Chiefs through chattering teeth, I don't think the listeners will mind that at all. Mitch, once again, have a Merry Christmas. Thanks for your time.
All right, boys. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you guys. And beat the drum, put the hammer down, baby.
That is the incomparably great Mitch Holthus. We'll take one final break. We will come back with the final word after this.
Conclusion. You better wrap it up.
Brendan, we got about 30 seconds for a final word. What do you got?
Final word for me, Merry Christmas to Dan, to Kyle, to our whole Sports on 580 team, to you on the text line, on the YouTube comments, and just listening. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays. Hope you enjoy the holiday season. Be warm. We'll talk to you next week.
I can't say any better than that. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good weekend. We're taking a 4-day weekend. We'll be back on Tuesday. Until then, for Brendan Dworzynski, for Kyle Manthey across the glass, I'm Dan Lucero. This has been another edition of 580 Sports Talk.